All right, let's talk about COVID-19, which is everybody's preoccupation right now. And the preoccupation this moment is how important it is for us to know how many people dying from COVID-19 also have pre existing health conditions or comorbidities. Alberta released this data. 98% of those that died had comorbidities. According to the Toronto Star, there is concern among health experts that publishing this information could lead people to disregard important safety measures. How should we be treating this information?
I will say that you should release any information you have. If that information is available, there should be no withholding of information. I know what the concern would be here, that will give anti-maskers and those more of an argument to say, look, the only people who are passing away are elderly people with pre-existing conditions, so we don't have to worry about this. And my counter to that would be, look, most Canadians are smart enough to know that that may be the case already, but we're still going to do our part to be safe and wear masks and stay at home when we can, because not all people that pass away have pre-existing conditions. I think the vast majority of Canadians will take that information and say, okay, that's knowledge I have, but that's not going to change the way I behave.
Well, I think you're right, James.
You know what, though?
The
I
vast
think
majority of people will feel that way, but there's going to be a lot of people, and there's that vocal group who will use that against those with comorbidities. And so, I was just looking at some information. We don't have a lot of information in Canada, but in the US, there's quite a bit of information. And then a lot of the people who have these other underlying issues are people who are Black or Hispanic or people of lower incomes. One of the things that they do in the US is people can check their personal health records online. And usually when you're more affluent or more informed, that's the type of thing you do. So you do know the issues that you have. A lot of people say, I have sugar. Sugar means you have diabetes. That is a problem, but it's just something a lot of people seem to live with. So I think the more information we have, I think that's the power. But the problem is when others use that power against you.
You know what? I think for anybody who is sitting watching us, and I can be one of those people, it is a luxury if you can actually say out loud right now, I don't know anybody who has had COVID or has died of COVID. And if you can actually sit there and say that, then you are really in a very privileged position, because we do know, to your point, Andrea, that there are certain communities that are disproportionately getting hit hard by this virus, and racism, socioeconomic status, education, immigration status, all of these things come to bear. So I can actually sit here and say, I don't know anybody personally who has died. And you know why? Because I'm privileged enough to say so. I can live in a home that has room. If there is an overcrowding issue, I have a job. I have an option to work from home. I have access to health care. I can start to list off all the reasons why I am so lucky to say that. And so for us, if we don't know about these comorbidities, you are actually saying that all the people who, because of systemic racism and so many other issues affecting poverty and food insecurities, you can actually say to yourself that they don't matter. Like, that's a very dangerous place
I don't think
to
I'm
be,
saying
so.
that I don't know if it's that you're saying that they don't. Like, I get what everyone is saying, but I would be lying if I said I'm not curious sometimes. And I think it's because that urge to know is because we're trying to piece together this virus that is so mysterious and deadly all at the same time. And the information has evolved, as we know. So while I understand the concerns around mentioning comorbidities, that there could be a certain fraction of the population who goes, oh, well, they were going to die anyway. And that is a terrible thing, because obviously high blood pressure and diabetes, those are not death sentences today in any regard. But at the same time, so again, I don't think that people should be having that kind of an approach to this. But I want to know, because the more information I know, the more I can start to understand. All of us are just trying to grasp at straws and piece this together. Anyway, Mrs. Talley on Twitter wrote and said, we need to stop talking about comorbidities altogether. People are alive, then they get COVID and die. COVID killed them. If you replace COVID with car accident, we wouldn't mention the pre-existing condition. We would never justify death, and it's emboldening people to act recklessly. Mrs. Talley, I hear you. I understand. I'm still curious about this. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I think for you, Sin, you come from a place where you want to know more, knowing that so many of these people have pre-existing conditions isn't going to make you go to the club. You're not hitting the gym, right? I get that. I think what's really concerning and super sad is that we have to have this conversation knowing that there are people who will receive this information and then take off for the club. Like I at the beginning of the pandemic in North America, like back in February, March, the thing we were told was that it affects the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions. And we were told, if you care about these people, stay home, lock it down. And that was what the appeal was, right? Do it for your neighbor. That is the whole thing of kindness, how to be a good person. Those are the lessons that you all teach your children. And somehow it's in 6 months, 7 months, it's evolved to let's not talk about the elderly and the comorbidities too much because it will, inspire a whole group of people to go out and start getting wild. I think that what this is exposed once again in the last 7 or 8 months is a really shameful part of our humanity. I think that's really sad. I think we should be really sad about that.
We should be sad. I think that's
right.
why we see on news.
Sorry?
Go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, I think she's bang on it. Suppressing information is never the answer. But the fact that we feel we have to suppress it because there's a segment of our population that are going to react in a horrible way is it's a sad statement. Lainey's right.
You know what, though? But you can't, and I agree with you. I think you have to have full transparency. I think there's distrust and mistrust in systems because of situations like this. I think that Ontario and I think every province has got to get on board to start to publish this information following in Alberta's suit, because you cannot fix what you cannot measure and you cannot study. And so if there are some people who actually do know real numbers and are choosing to withhold it, that engenders this mistrust that we're already seeing rampant in so many of our institutions. I just think it's a very slippery slope to go there than it is to say to everybody, here's all the information, make the right decisions, rather than we're holding some stuff, everyone still be careful. I hope we are going to appeal to the humanity in everyone to say we've got to keep everybody safe.